We're about to witness Mahomes versus Allen part 4 in the playoffs. We're about to witness the Commanders in an NFC Conference Championship game for the first time since the early 90s. Uh, the Eagles going back to the conference championship game for the second time in the last 3 years. I mean, so many great things just happened this past week during the divisional round of the playoffs. And of course, I'm here to speak on it. Welcome to the Chill Taste Podcast, man. I'm your host, Darian. And yeah, man, what a weekend of football. Now, of course, there were some snoozer games, some what I call background music games, but nevertheless, we're going to talk about each and every one of them. But most importantly, though, before I get into the show, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you sub to the pod, like this show, comment down below your thoughts on these games before I give my actual thoughts. But also stick around, of course, follow me on other platforms. TikTok has been banned. We're back up. You know what I'm saying? So it was only banned for what, a total of 8 hours, if so, right? We're back up on TikTok, man. Chill Takes on there. Chill Takes underscore on X. Chill Takes on Instagram, so on and so forth, man. My links will be available down below. But let's get into these games because it is early Monday morning, 12:15 a.m. I have a night job, so I don't sleep. So this right now is prime for me to get active and to get into my bag and, my content. But, of course, the Bills and Ravens game just ended less than, 3-4 hours ago. And I want to talk about that game first because that's on the top of my mind right now. But I'll go down from, of course, I want to say the game of wild card week, divisional round weekend last. Because even though this game right here was spectacular in ways of the buildup, but there was a game that happened in Detroit that was the game of the week, the upset of arguably one of the biggest upsets we've seen in the playoffs in quite some time, right? So, maybe Jaguar Steelers 2017 or 2018 year, right? You know what I'm saying? Maybe that. But let's talk about this game first, Ravens and Bills, because it's the last game I was able to watch and I remember it freshly. So, and I'll trickle down from there. So, man, this was a game I tipped my hat off to the Buffalo Bills coming into this matchup. I had the Ravens winning by a close score. I didn't think they would go in there and dominate. I honestly thought they were going to go in there and kind of surprise and potentially dominate. But my guess was they win by a potential field goal by Tucker or, a 6-point spread, right? And that is not what happened, right? I thought this Ravens team came in offensively, first drive, spectacular, right? Went down and scored 4 throws, 4 runs, 73 yards, touchdown. I'm thinking, Josh Allen in the offense, you better get your bootstraps together because this is going to be potentially a game that if you screw up at any moment, it can come back to haunt you. And ironically, that's exactly what happened to the Ravens because on the flip side of that, the Bills had a great opening drive as well that led to a touchdown. And what made me think after his game settled down is what Rasul Douglas said last week in their game against the Broncos wildcard weekend. You know, how the Broncos came out and scored first drive. And he was like, you got to have a short-term memory, right? Just because you had a bad moment 2 minutes into a game that's 60 minutes does not mean the entire game can go bad. That is great coaching. Whoever his DB coach is or Sean McDermott, whoever is preaching that message in the locker room, you can tell it breathes into the whole entire team, right? They are able to overcome adversity and be able to stay even keeled in moments, right? You know what I'm saying? Just because you have 4 bad minutes in a day, it's 24 hours in a day, right? That doesn't mean your whole entire day is bad. I love that by Rasul Douglas. And that is exactly what we saw tonight from this Bills team, right? I thought they played complimentary football, you know what I'm saying, on both sides. Solid enough, great defensive game plan. And, of course, it took advantage of turnovers. And going back to the Ravens, I felt as if this is a game that they, without question, in my opinion, self-imploded, self-inflicted wounds. 3 turnovers by the Ravens in this matchup, 3 costly ones, too. Every single one of them cost them, even the arm punt by Lamar Jackson to begin this game. They outgained the Bills in every major offensive category. More yards total, more passing yards. I'm sorry. I have to get my notes in the way. I'm sorry. More passing yards, more rushing yards, more third down conversions. But they had, of course, more penalties. But what was mostly an outlier in this game was the turnovers. Right, you had the arm pump by Lamar Jackson in the first quarter. That didn't really come back to haunt them. But the fumble, of course, that led to points. Before the fumble even happened, that drive was a little messed up. Right, they had. I thought throughout the entire first half, I thought the Ravens' offensive line was getting manhandled by the Bills' defensive line. All right, I thought Phillips, Rizzo, Von Miller, Ed Oliver had a really great game against the Ravens' offensive line, especially in that first half. Right, second half they kind of laid down a little bit because, of course, the running attack got going for the Ravens. But that first half they set the tone, and I thought it knocked the Ravens off their game for sure. I mean, you saw Tyler Linderbaum getting pushed on his ass. Excuse my language, but I mean that's the truth, right? I mean, it got so bad in that one possession that he tripped over Lamar, and it led to lost yardage, which also led to a Mark Andrews drop, which eventually led to, a missed snap that was, known that was later recalled by Lamar Jackson as an RPO, but when he wasn't able to push the ball down the field, so he had to make something out of nothing. And when he squeezed the ball in cold, snowy weather, it slipped out and it led to a fumble, and of course that turned into points. So, long before you knew, the Ravens were down 21-10 going into halftime. All right. And I thought in the second half, they came out with a better game plan. Right. And I almost thought to myself, I was like, man, this could be a game where we look at where we ask ourselves, why did Joe Brady take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands? So we'll talk about that later in the Chiefs and Bills preview, because we want to talk about the winners only and not harp on to the bad things, right? Because they won. We'll talk about it later. But I was thinking, okay, this Ravens defense is playing great. I mean, they I think at one point the Bills only had one rushing yard in the third quarter, going into the fourth, almost damn near. They only had two offensive possessions that the Ravens did really well at stopping, and the Ravens were able to put the ball back into their offensive hands of defense, by the way, and the Ravens were able to run the ball efficiently. I thought Justice Hill played really good tonight. Derrick Henry, I thought he played good. I thought he should have got the ball more, right? He was getting stronger as the game went on. That is exactly how Derrick Henry has been throughout his entire NFL career. You can bottle him up the first quarter, second quarter. When it comes around to that third quarter, and especially depending on the weather you're in, cold, rainy, sleet or snow, whatever, he's going to get better. And he started getting better. He started having longer runs, you know what I'm saying? And I felt as if they took the ball out of his hands, and they kind of had to, I guess, in certain situations. But there's a stat that I think it said the Ravens were undefeated this year. Derrick Henry had 85 yards or plus, and he finished with 84. And I'm gonna get back to where that 85 could have came later. But I thought they played really well in the second half, right? And I do want to say Lamar Jackson played good enough to win. Even though this wasn't his best performance, it wasn't a masterclass, but he definitely played good enough to win. The defense played good enough to win. But when the momentum started to shift, turnover happened again. And you can place the blame on one sole player. I wouldn't do that, because I think collectively, when you see one person mess up, especially your leader, it trickles down, right? You can also say coaching. When you have coaches not calling their best plays in key moments, when you're in the red zone and you get stuffed and you don't have that fluidity or that comfortability offensively, and you're not able to put up points, it makes players kind of, in a sense, go beyond their means to make plays, because they want to put you in the best position possible to succeed. And that is what Mark Andrews tried to do. Now, if you watch the tape, there is an angle where it looked as if he could have just cut off field and took it straight, but instead he tried to catch the bat ball for a big chunk play, right, and dodge the defender, which we don't really see Mark Andrews try to juke people, but he tried to juke the defender. And of course, Bernard, the linebacker, caused an amazing fumble. Right. So I'm thinking, like, God damn, bro, this is definitely just one of those games where the Ravens can't get out of their way. Right. And, the Ravens, I think they forced another field goal, and they were down 24-19, something. Okay. They have another opportunity. They get the ball. All right. Special teams, they start out behind the 8 ball because they have a special teams holding after getting some good field position after a Key and Mitchell return. So they get the ball, on their 20-yard line, almost 25-yard line, something like that, right? They drive down the field. Lamar's making big plays. Mark Andrews has a big catch. Likely has a big catch, I want to say, as well. And the pocket's clean. I mean, this is when I think at this point during the game, I'm like, damn, this Bills defense looks to be a bit worn out, because their offense can't generate anything positive outside of this one or these 2 field goals, right? So, the last play, right? I mean, Lamar has all day to throw. They're walling up really well offensively. Makes a big time throw to Isaiah Likely, but you can't get too high because you must execute the 2-point conversion because at this point it is 27-25. And they call a flood to the right, and I think it's a good concept. Now, when I say the Ravens may have, should have given the ball, and it wouldn't have mattered because I guess on the 2-point conversion, yardage doesn't really count or touchdown. So I guess it wouldn't have mattered. But in that particular moment, you could have just given the ball to Derrick Henry for an extra 2 yards for a 2-point conversion, right? But instead, Todd Monken draws up a flood to the right concept, and I feel as if a lot of Todd Monken's red zone plays were a bit iffy outside of that one rushing touchdown to Derrick Henry, but yeah, I mean they get in the red zone. I mean their 2-point conversion, which is still kind of red zone plays, right? Their goal line plays, flood right concept, and the play opens up, right? I mean you get you get the look you need. You have Mark Andrews in the flat, and of course it wasn't the best throw, but it was a good enough plays ball, right? Now you can blame it on the weather, missed footing, mistiming yourself, not knowing where you're at in the end zone or whatever, but it was right in his chest. And of course, it was a catch where he had to kind of like just fold and just hope that he landed in the end zone. He flat out dropped it. Mark Andrews did, and you're thinking to yourself, "That's it." So, I mean, that's just self-infliction wounds, and you self-implode like that, and you only lose by 2 points, and you have to think to yourselves, "How do we lose? How do we lose by 2 points?" Because when you lose in a close fashion like that, you had to be doing something wrong, right? Because now you got blown out. You lost by 2 points. So what did you do wrong? You can equate to turnovers, the penalties, and of course, the mishaps in the red zone and 2-point conversion opportunities. Because that's not only the first time, that's the second 2-point conversion they blew. The first one was when they scored the touchdown with Derrick Henry. They had Isaiah Likely running underneath, and Lamar Jackson didn't put his best touch on the throw, and Matt Milano knocked it down. And that was early in the fourth quarter, I want to say, or late third. So self-implosion, man. Not good enough on execution. But hats off to this Bills team, man. I mean, I wasn't a big believer in this Bills team entering the season. I thought they were going to miss the playoffs. I felt as if this team was not good enough to compete for anything of significance. Right? I thought Josh Allen would have had to play hero ball for them to get to where they needed to be. And tonight and throughout this entire season, that is something he has rarely had to do. He doesn't have to play hero ball anymore. And maybe that is the recipe going forward for potentially the Ravens and any other team that wants to compete for a championship in the AFC. Complementary, cohesive football may be the way, right? And like I said, I'll talk more about the Bills in their preview later on this week. But they just have a team from top to bottom. Right? I'm watching guys get hurt. Backups come in, still making big time plays, right? They lost Taylor Rapp in this game. They lost Teron Johnson for a moment in this game. They lost a lot of key players defensively, man. And their bench players stepped in and made big time plays. So shout out to their coaching. Shout out to the overall just mentality of the team right now. And also big ups to the Bills Mafia, man. They made a big home field advantage today. You know what I'm saying? They say it's like a college campus, college-like lifestyle, a college-like atmosphere in Orchard Park. So, everything came together, and the Bills are heading back to the AFC Conference Championship and back. I'm sorry, not in back-to-back seasons, but their third appearance in the last 5 years, something like that. But their opponent, we'll talk about them right now. And hold on, before I want to leave, I want to say this about Lamar Jackson before I get onto the Chiefs and Texans. There's a lot of conversations about Lamar Jackson that's going to continue to pour on throughout this entire offseason, right? And it's going to be tough for a lot of Lamar Jackson fans, Ravens fans, so on and so forth, right? Or people just that actually watch the game and say that, this time around, as cliche as it might sound, as cliche as it might sound, it wasn't his fault, right? But at some point, I feel as if he has to find a way to get out this struggle in the playoffs, right? I think in 3 playoff games, he was favored to win. He lost all 3 of them. He has 3 total touchdowns in that game and 7 total turnovers. I want to say it's 4 fumbles and 3 interceptions, something like that, right? like I said, tonight's game wasn't a bad performance by Lamar Jackson. I thought he played well enough to win, but his overall playoff resume, the only quarterbacks he's beaten has been Ryan Tannehill, a washed up Russell Wilson, and a rookie CJ Stroud. He's 3-5 in the postseason, right? And he has yet to win multiple games in a postseason as well. So we'll get that out of the way, right? That's going to be the talk of the conversation all throughout this week and also all throughout the offseason. So what can happen going forward? Continue to chip away, right? He's going to break through eventually, in my opinion. I feel as if when you are this talented as a player, multiple time All-Pro, multiple time MVP, the cards have to be in your favor at some point, right? I just pulled up a few quarterbacks throughout NFL history that have accomplished just as much as Lamar Jackson, from Pro Bowls, All-Pros, and even MVPs combined, right? You have someone like Peyton Manning. He won his first championship at 30 years old. You have Drew Brees. He's never won MVP, but he won his first championship at 31 years old. Matthew Stafford never won MVP, but he won his first championship at 34 years old. Now, of course, he had to leave, but you get what I'm saying. John Elway, I'm quite sure he won MVP. He won his first championship at 37 years old. And I can do many more. I'm pretty sure Brett Favre may have won his late in his 20s, early 30s. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think guys like Tom Brady, of course, in the past, and Patrick Mahomes are rare finds. You know what I'm saying? And also, from what happened this year, in my opinion, and I think other people can agree with this, no one in the AFC got better. And I don't think anyone's, unless, one of these rookie quarterbacks comes in and has a Jaden Daniels type season, I think it's going to be the same guys in the playoffs, right? The Ravens are going to be there, maybe sprinkling the Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, and whoever else you want to sprinkle in for those last three teams. But, I think the Ravens have a fighting chance, man. Honestly, I think they can still get better, right? Marlon Humphrey spoke about how this team will look different next year, more than likely, with a lot of new faces and guys not being on their contracts anymore. But I feel as if going forward, one thing's for sure is that Lamar Jackson has continued to get better in the postseason. I think he will. But also, this Ravens team has to find a way to bring in some legitimate receivers, right? Not having Zay Flowers was big, but they have to go out there and get them a legitimate receiver. I think Derrick Henry was an amazing addition. I think he can serve at least 2 to 3 more seasons there. But they got to go out there and get themselves a legitimate X-Factor receiver. And I'm not sure how you're going to do it. Rather, if it's a free agency haul by a T. Higgins potentially, which I doubt he does because it's an AFC North Division rival. You can trade for Tyreek Hill potentially, or try to find a way to trade up in the NFL draft. And there's not too many household receivers you can say outside of Tetairoa McMillan and Luther Burden in this year's draft class. But you got to do your homework and bring in a legitimate wide receiver one to play alongside Zay Flowers and the rest of the weapons they have offensively for Lamar to succeed going forward. So that's my only take on it with Lamar, man. I think he played well enough to win today. Of course, it wasn't his best game. The turnovers, if there were less of those, they may have won. But regardless, though, I think Lamar will be fine. He'll get his eventually. But, keep chipping away. That's all I can say. He's only 28 years old. He'll be 29 this time next year. So I think he is in still a great spot. As long as 8 is in Baltimore, man, the championship window, in my opinion, is going to be open. But anyways, that's my monologue, I guess you can say, on Lamar Jackson. But let's talk about the Bills' next opponent, right? The Kansas City Chiefs, for the umpteenth time, are heading back to the AFC Conference Championship, right? 7 straight AFC Conference Championships. Patrick Mahomes is 7-0 in divisional games. Whew, boy. I mean, this is the Chiefs Invitational, right? As a Warriors fan, I can relate, man. I know how it feels to go to consecutive conference championship games, man, all right? When you watch your team play against others, it's like, at no point in that Texans and Chiefs game did I feel as if the Chiefs were going to lose. Even when Stroud was playing good football, the offense was moving, they were having chunk plays. In no moment did I feel as if the Chiefs were going to lose that game, because I just feel as if they're just so much better than everybody. And it may not even be a talent thing in some aspects. It's just the overall mental side of things, man. They're just way ahead. They're way ahead, man. I think they have a mastermind, Andy Reid. Spags is dialing up some exotic things. And, of course, you have the best quarterback in football. Even if he's not playing his best football right now, he is still doing enough. And, of course, you have your playoff risers, right? Usually, when your team's a dynasty, whether it's in the NBA or the NFL, even MLB, you have playoff risers. And, of course, Travis Kelce, old man Trav, right? Throughout this entire season, hasn't looked the same. What did he do? Game 1 of the playoffs, fresh off a bye week, He understood the assignment. I think he had like 9 receptions for 117 yards and 1 touchdown. Lit that Texans defense up. Out of all guys, it's the same guy that kills them. So, yeah, man. But let's talk about, the Texans and what went wrong, right? Now, I felt as if the Texans had a shot to win this game, but a few things stood out to me. In my notes, I have that, the Texans offensive line did a terrible job of protecting Stroud. Stroud got sacked 8 times. Karlaftis had himself a day, right? He had, I want to say, 3 or 4 sacks. Chris Jones had 3 sacks, and I guess a couple other guys, toggled him some more, something around those lines, right? The offensive line was depleted, and they've been getting bashed in all year. And I think it's a huge emphasis on what needs to happen going forward this offseason is that they have to address the interior of their offensive line. Because I think Larry Tunsil was fine, regardless of the issues he had this year from a penalty aspect. But I think they have to improve the interior because if not, Stroud is not going to be able to do what he needs to do. And I think that was one of his better games this year. And he threw no touchdowns, no interceptions either. But he was able to utilize his legs, extend plays, and also, just give the Texans a fighting chance, right? But of course, they got to get healthy. Tank Dell hopefully can come back. I'm not sure if they bring back Stephon Diggs. Nico is phenomenal. He made some big time plays. Dalton Schultz made some big time plays, but they gotta continue to get better offensively. I think defensively, I think the absence of Jalen Petrie in this game definitely came up. It definitely came up, man. I think Jalen Petrie would have been more serviceable on Travis Kelce. No one's stopping Travis Kelce, by the way, but I think it would have been more serviceable than a rookie like Bullock in the game, of course. You know what I'm saying? And the other nickels or safeties they had and linebackers they had on Kelce. So, but outside of that, I thought the defense played fine. But of course, we have to talk about the potential bad calls that maybe gave the Chiefs more of a bit of advantage. Now, I made a note about this, and I made a video about this on all my platforms. You can go check it out. And I questioned if that, that phantom roughing the passer call should have been picked up. I believe it should have. Now, of course, refs nowadays can make a call, and I get why the call was made, right? Because you see the quarterback give himself up late. He did give himself up late, but you see 2 players colliding, having helmet noise, right? They both the two defensive players definitely hit each other's helmets, but Patrick Mahomes is left unscathed. Now, in that particular moment, I'm sure you can review it quickly or have someone from the booth tell you like, oh yeah, the quarterback didn't get hit, pick the flag up. And they've done that before. They've picked flags up plenty of times before, but instead they decided to still call it. And maybe because they felt as if he was still leading with the crown of his helmet, but regardless though, I felt in that situation, that's a terrible call. You pick that up. Now, Chiefs fans were countering and say, well, that particular flag, it didn't really cost them. Like they still had opportunities to stop the Chiefs from scoring and didn't. Well, yeah, but at the same time, they still were able to give the Chiefs an extra 15 yards that put them on the plus side of the 50, right? So that means it's a bit harder to defend. And of course, you could say that all you want, but when you give a team like the Chiefs another opportunity to continue to dig into their playbook and also give them extra moments in the game to take advantage of, it's going to hurt them. You know what I'm saying? It's going to hurt the opposing team because you're giving that to the 2-time champs the back-to-back champs that have been there before and know how to take advantage of the situations. So, yeah, that's my only thing on that. Now, I think the first one was rightfully called. I think Will Anderson definitely led with his helmet, regardless of if it was a hard hit or not. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he still led with his crown. Second one should have been picked up. Now, the Mahomes flopping, I get that, but I've never seen the NFL call excessive flopping on any player, right? But I did notice throughout this entire weekend that you can tell, regardless of what game you watch, outside of the Commanders and Lions game, I thought that was a pretty clean game from we're going to hit and not bitch about calls. But I felt as if throughout this entire weekend, anytime a quarterback, a lot of the scrambling quarterbacks ran out of bounds or got hit late or tapped and they kind of fell over a little bit, I felt as if, man, like the fans have such, throw flag reactions. And that just goes to show that's not the fans' fault. It's just how officiating has gotten so bad nowadays, right? Back in the day, when a player got hit like that, it wasn't that automatic reaction, right? Of course, players, teams and fans got mad and stuff like that. You might have had some uproar and then the flags are called, but like the game has gotten so bad with officiating nowadays, man. Like you don't know, you're getting to a point you don't know what roughing the passer is or not. Same thing with like, what's a foul or not in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Or what's a catch or not in the NFL in years past? Like we don't know what a roughing the passer is or not because we've seen guys barely get touched or get landed on, you know what I'm saying, because of a full on hit, and they call it roughing the passer. So that was kind of frustrating to watch. And that flop play by Mahomes was something that was definitely just so nasty to the game. And hopefully they take a look at that in the offseason and they say, okay, like, well, maybe we need to start flopping these. Maybe we need to start penalizing these players for flopping, right? I think they should because, if I didn't touch you and you flopping out of bounds trying to initiate contact or get the refs to throw their flag, and of course the refs do a good job of judging the play and saying, okay, that's not nothing. But I still think that should be a penalty. Maybe not like anything egregious, but like 5 yards back or something like that. Like what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? You just trying to, you're trying to take advantage of the game, right? But anyways, maybe that's just a dumb take on me, but that's just how I feel, man. And I'm not saying that Lamar's. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that Mahomes is the only one that does it, but it's just aggravating. Anyways, shout out to the Chiefs. Unfortunately, back to the conference championship. Like I said, man, I understand how it is as a Warriors fan, as a former consecutive championship appearing team. I know how it is, man. It sucks if you're not a fan because you're like, man, I want some type of parity in the league. But at the same time, though, hey, man, they could potentially accomplish something that has never been done before, which is a Super Bowl three-peat. Now, moving on to the game, I pretty much did not care about, right? Because not saying that I didn't care. I don't care. I mean, not to say I don't care about playoff games, but this game was just so boring to watch, and the snow made it worse. But Rams and Eagles. Shout out to Saquon Barkley. Shout out to the Eagles defense. I feel like that's been a storyline for this entire team throughout the entire season, right? Saquon Barkley offensively, the MVP of this offense, the offensive player of the year, in my opinion, and this Eagles defense, no matter who it can be, the safeties making plays, cornerbacks, Carter, Zach Bond, someone on this defense is always going to make a play. And that is exactly what we've seen. I thought the Rams played good enough to win. I thought I'm sorry. I thought that I keep saying Sam. I thought that Matthew Stafford played good football. I thought that Puka Nacua had some big time catches, and even in this type of weather, Cooper Kupp had some plays. Demarcus Robinson had plays. Tyler Higbee had plays. So the offensive line did an okay job of protecting Stafford, right? I think defensively they played well enough for sure. That defense had like 9-10 sacks today, something like that, right? I mean, Jared Verse had himself a big time performance. Byron Young, Brandon Fisk. I mean, that defensive line entering next year, maybe top 3 in the NFL, man. That Chris Shula has done an amazing job in turning that defense around. I think next year for sure, that'll be one of the NFL's best defenses in football once again. And they're young. So that's an amazing haul by and identifying talent by Sean McVay and the course general manager. I forgot his name, but he's probably the best GM in football. But hats off to them on that. But yeah, man. I mean, like, it was the same storyline for the Eagles. I mean, like I said, Barkley played amazing defense, but we got to talk about Jalen Hurts, man. I made a tweet today. I gotta find it. Right, I'm gonna find it right now. I made a tweet, and I said, "What does Jalen Hurts do to make those believe he's a top 10 quarterback in football?" Now, granted, he was hurt. Right, he had that leg injury, and obviously, it was apparent because his pocket awareness today was abysmal. After that big run he had for 40 yards, he had nothing to show for. Right. So, what does Hurts do that makes him a top 10 quarterback? Like, legitimate question. Is it because he's a winner? Right. And we all know QBs should not be defined by wins and losses. Wins and losses are a team thing. Now, of course, if your QB is costing you games, and he's not costing them games, I'll give you that. But, like, he doesn't do anything. He does not do anything he plays within the system. I'll give him that. But if they ask him to make plays, he could not do it tonight, right? He took a bad sack in the end zone that led to a safety, holding on to the ball too long, not hitting on reason. Now, of course, AJ Brown dropped a big pass that could have led to a touchdown catch. But regardless, though, that's like, one for every mistake that Hurts makes, in my opinion. I feel as if he is not playing good enough football to potentially win a championship. Like I said, we'll get into those talks later during conference championship preview. But I thought that I don't know, man. Nothing Hurts does wows me. And I think a lot of fans need to get off that hype train and stop hyping him up and just realize that they got a quarterback that can just do his job. And they're pretty much like Jared Goff, Brock Purdy type level of quarterback play they're witnessing, and maybe even a little lesser than that, in my opinion. So, but anyways, man, shout out to the Eagles. They got the job done. I'm not trying to harp down on Hurts. He's still a winner, right? He's going to the conference championship, the second one in the last 3 years. So congratulations to him. And their next opponent is going to be a team that, woo-wee, boy, they did something that no one could have fathomed. Oh, man, the Washington Commanders, dog. What a storyline this year. Coming into this game, I did not think an upset could happen. I thought it was possible, very slight chance, but I always felt as if this Lions team was just too in the moment and ready to capitalize and get to the conference championship and rewrite their wrong from last year. But, man, the Commanders were not just there for shits and giggles. They were there to win that game, and you can tell from the first time they took the field, they never wavered. They never wavered at all, man. They had full confidence about their entire matchup. They answered every single call, every single shot the Lions had on them. They forced turnovers. They played clean football. I mean, it was an amazing overall game. I mean, JD played phenomenal once again in back-to-back weeks. I mean, I think they say he's the first quarterback to have over 300 yards passing or something like that, and 2 touchdowns, and the completion percentage. First time in rookie history or NFL history for a rookie to do this in 2 playoff games. I mean, this is incredible. Cliff Kingsbury, way to rewrite your wrongs, man. Like, it was not your fault in Arizona. It was not your fault in Arizona. Like, I think after one more year of continue to grow with JD and potentially win MVP maybe and get back to this spot next year, I think you would definitely be in the cards for a head coaching gig if you were to take it. Dan Quinn, way to rewrite your wrongs, or way to rewrite the people that wrote you off for just being hired as the head coach. Everyone said that, or you weren't head coach material because of how things ended in Atlanta and stuff like that. How you blew the Super Bowl and how you just fizzled out along the way. And the last time we seen you in football action, your team gave up, X amount of points to a young Packers team. Woo-wee, boy. And shout out to the Commanders for just flat out doing the right thing by clean house. And of course, it took the extraordinary racism by Dan Snyder and the evilness of Dan Snyder to get out of the way, right? Extraordinary racism sounds crazy, but this is how by far out this man was just beyond evil. You know what I'm saying? But it took that to happen for you to clean house, new ownership, and Joe Harris. You bring in Adam Peters. You bring in Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn brings in his guys along with Cliff Kingsbury. You draft a franchise quarterback. And now look, man, things are just so like, this is why I wish my team would do this in just the right way, the right process, man. Why the Raiders have a great shot at getting Ben Johnson. If you do things the right way, you will be rewarded. So shout out to the Commanders, man. Accomplishing something that hasn't been done since the early 90s, right? And the same team they beat to get there was this Lions team, and they blew them out too. So shout out to the Commanders. Also becoming the third team in this century to accomplish an NFC Conference Championship appearance in the NFC East. Giants, Eagles, now the Commanders. Only team left out, the Dallas Cowboys. Haven't been there since 96. Unfortunate, Jerry Jones. When would you get it together? Probably never. But regardless, though, I ain't mean to take a shot at Dallas fans, but I'm just saying, man, you all know how we feel about Jerry Jones. He's terrible. But let's talk about the Lions, man. Let's talk about these Detroit Lions and what happened. Man, what a season. What a meltdown. Like I talked about with the Commanders, they stayed in the moment. I felt as if the Lions came in looking ahead. And that was and outside of potentially, having this meltdown and why I said the Commanders, I didn't think they would win. They didn't really give them a shot. But if they were to have a shot, I said in my last podcast, if the Lions come out flat after having that first round bye, because they're not used to that, it could bowl them some trouble, because I didn't worry about the Chiefs facing it because they've had multiple first round byes in the dynasty run. The Lions have never experienced this. So how are they going to respond? And they responded the worst way. I thought overall they came out and played too cute. I think Dan Campbell called too many cute plays at the beginning. I'm sorry, wasn't as aggressive as we've seen Dan Campbell throughout this season. He let too many cute things happen. I thought that 3rd and 1 in the first, I want to say, quarter before the second quarter, they had 3rd and 1 and they decided to pass the ball inside like their own 30 or 25-yard line. I'm sorry, inside the Commanders' 30, 25-yard line, I want to say. 3rd and 1, they decided to drop back and pass with Jared Goff and shotgun. He fumbled the ball. Dan Quinn, we've seen you and Ben Johnson collaborate on 3rd and 1 many a times and run the football with Jahmyr Gibbs. Run the football with Penei Sewell. Run the football with David Montgomery. Run the football, QB sneak, so on and so forth. And I know you would have went for it if you didn't get it, but you decided to pass the ball, which led to a turnover. But regardless of that, you overcame that, right? But then we seen Jared Goff play like Jared Goof. And I made a TikTok video saying that, Dan Quinn, did he out scheme or, out coach Ben Johnson? Did he outduel the magnificent Ben Johnson? And granted, Ben Johnson's a hell of a coach. I think he's going to do really well in this league. But no, I don't think he did. I joked about it, but I don't think he did. I think Jared Goff just played flat out terrible. I think he lacked timing with the receivers. He was inaccurate. And he flat out just missed throws, right? That first interception he threw, the ball was too high. Not sure he was targeting. I think Amon St. Brown might have been in the area. Way too high. Led to a pick six by Michael Centrell, another rookie on this Commanders defense out of Michigan. Ironically, Wolverine had to go back home and turn up. Shout out to him. Then he had before halftime, where I think they might have been down by 10 at this point, right? At halftime, before halftime, he driving on the field, putting together a really good drive, methodically pushing the ball on the field. The Commanders defense, what I spoke about as well, if they want a shot at winning this game, they must play great red zone defense. They've been one of the best red zone defenses in football, and they force turnovers. If they can force turnovers and stop the red zone offense, they have a shot. They got in the red zone area, forced turnover. And like I said, it wasn't like a crazy exotic play called up by Dan Quinn. Jared Goff just had Jameson Williams running a post route in the end zone, and instead of leading him more to the left side, he threw it right on the money. A little too accurate, I would say, or underthrow, I guess you can say. And anytime you run a post route and you underthrow the ball, or you try to throw the ball on the dot, a corner can easily undercut that, pick it off. And that is exactly what Santrell did again. He picked it off. So then you have the third quarter. And I thought as if the Rams were making their comeback, and so were the Commanders were still putting points on the board, right? And we'll get into Aaron Glenn here in a second, because I ain't going to leave him hanging either, even though his defense has been plagued with injuries. But I got to talk about him too. But in the third quarter, or top of the fourth quarter, 38-28, right? You are driving to potentially be down by only 3 points, and you're pushing the ball down the field once again. But instead, Ben Johnson, I'm not sure if you did this because of the lack of confidence you have in your quarterback, because you already ran this play early in the game in a way with your backup quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, who had to come in for Jared Goff after getting popped after throwing his pick six. But you had an early play that had a reverse play to Jameson Williams. You called it at the perfect time, and Jameson Williams to the crib. Perfect play, perfect dial up. But you call it again, but this time you give the option for J-Mo to throw. Now, I can fault the coach respectfully for saying, okay, in that moment in the fourth quarter, down by 10, you cannot call that play. But I also can place blame on the player, right? Because why in the world is Jameson Williams having the idea to throw the football when the play is obviously not open? I'm not sure why receivers do that. I'm not sure if it's because they just blank out. They're just throw the ball, make the play happen. But it's like, bro, you are rolling out to your right. The play is dead. Either tuck the ball and run, or you throw it out of bounds. He throws it to Santrell again. I think I want to say Santrell caught another pick. You threw it to the Washington Commanders DB again. And that pretty much game over, right? So that might have been a bad dial by Ben Johnson. He might have got cute at times this game too, for sure. He had his moments, but, I had to place more of the blame on Jared Goff in this game offensively. But like I said, Ben Johnson, he isn't scot-free either. As for Aaron Glenn, he'll be on the coaching hiring list here soon. He'll have a job by the end of this week, I'm quite sure. I think he'll be really good in this league too. But I think in this matchup, entering this game, the key thing was for you to win, you must dial up pressure. You must blitz Jaden Daniels, make him uncomfortable, and get out of man. You cannot stay in man when you play against this Commanders' offense because they're going to take advantage of it because they trust the receivers and their playmakers to go out there and make plays over your DBs, your corners especially, who are not the best, with not Carlton Davis out there. And unfortunately, at the beginning of the game, and I know that kind of killed the morale. Kind of felt like when Dre Greenlaw got hurt in last year's Super Bowl game against the Chiefs while they were running off defensively. Everything looked really smooth. And I know that this injury was a bit earlier, but it felt the same, right? You lose, a heart and a soul of your defense who was really grinding this year. Great comeback story, had a magnificent game. The last time we seen him play, he breaks his arm like 2 minutes in the game. It was just so sad to see, but he didn't really adjust until the second half. And when it was too late. Like, you play man across the board with your cornerback 5, 6, and Terrion Arnold, who has been terrible this year, leaving your safeties out to dry. Kirby Joseph had one of his worst games. So did Brian Branch, and he got hurt too. Brian Branch did. And he didn't dial up any pressures until third, fourth quarter. And it was too late. It was just too late. It was too late. So you can blame the injuries for Aaron Glenn's defense, but I felt as if he just did not call. He got too cute. He trusted his players a little too much. And I get that, but that is what happens when you run aggressive man-to-man. You have no pass rushers, man. If you can't get to the quarterback in man, you're screwed. And the Commanders' offensive line did an amazing job of protecting Jaden Daniels about the entire night. He barely got hit until like the third, fourth quarter. And it was because the Lions defense couldn't generate any pressure, and that could be because of course, no Aiden Hutchinson. But I just felt like the injuries finally came up to bite on the Lions, unfortunately. And overall for Dan Quinn, right? I think of course the head of the snake deserves his blame too. This is Dan Quinn's second blown opportunity in the playoffs. And I think this one is a bit more magnified because, of course, last year he gave up a 17-point lead in last year's conference championship game against the Niners on the road. But this time, heavy favorite at home, the 1 seed, the back-to-back NFC North Division champs, 15-2, and you couldn't even get to a conference championship game. That falls heavily on you. And of course, took a lot of blame for sure. He was very emotional. I love seeing that when the coach has accountability. We all know Dan Campbell wants it just as bad as any other player in that locker room. But that you have to look yourself in the mirror, man, and say, how can I get better from this? And it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a bit tougher, in my opinion, regardless of the skill set they have, because you can have all the players in the world. If you don't have the right coaches in play, Eagles last year, it doesn't matter. So I think it's going to be really tough for Dan Campbell to get back to this level of this stature record-wise. And, of course, they can be a playoff team next year for sure, because I don't think anybody in the NFC as of right now can really knock them off their pivot unless, the Vikings come back stronger with Darnold, or Jordan Love can kick back into who we think he can be, and whoever the Bears hire next year as their head coach, and they can take their team to the roof with Caleb Williams. But I think the Lions will be back in the thick of things for sure. But are they this championship favorite? I'm not sure, man. They're going to lose both their coordinators. And I think it's way easier to replace a defensive coordinator in comparisons to an offensive play caller, right? You're going to lose Ben Johnson and all his creativity, and more than likely his best play caller or passing game coordinator. So you're going to have to go out there and hire, and I'm pretty sure you're going to have a bucket list of guys that want to come in and rejuvenate their careers or work with this offense with Jahmyr Gibbs, Monroe St. Brown, Jared Goff still. But I don't know, man. And we'll talk more about the Lions later on this offseason, but very tough pill to swallow, man. But hats off to the Commanders, man. This was a phenomenal win. I've been seeing the fans on the timeline. My boy, I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but my boy TJ, met him here in Jersey. He's a big, big Commanders fan. The first Commanders fan I ever met. It's like a rarity. I guess it's like when people meet Jaguar fans, but he a Commander fan in Jersey. And I know he's been saying it all year. We going to the Super Bowl. I'm like, man, I ain't going to the Super Bowl, man. He's got quarterback Jaden Daniels, no weapons for real outside of Terry. I ain't going nowhere. And long and behold, they are a game away from this year's Super Bowl championship, which is ironically in Louisiana, where JD played collegiate football. So who knows, man? Who knows? But anyways, man, this was a great recap. Divisional round playoffs. This was, like I said, a really good round of games. Unfortunate things happened for a few teams I was rooting for. But nevertheless, though, man, we got some good football, and we have 2 more weeks of legitimate football. Pro legitimate, of course, but we have 2 more weeks. Or I'm sorry, 2 more games of legitimate football, man. Of course, Conference Championship week, and of course, we have Super Bowl Sunday in the beginning of February. So that'll do it, man. Thank y'all for tapping in. Like I said, if you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like this video, comment down below your thoughts on any of the playoff games this week, your thoughts on Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, so on and so forth, man. Drop them down below. And also, please follow me on all platforms. Chill Takes, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, man. But this was a great show. And also on Spotify and Apple Music. Thank you guys for tapping with this as well. But till next time, man, that is a wrap. And also, if you're in the really, really cold weather, man, stay warm, stay safe. It's snowing where I'm at. Maybe it's snowing where you're at as well. But make sure you stay bundled up indoors. Until next time, that is a wrap.